Perhaps you already know that one of my favorite sports is exploiting, analyzing narcissist apologies in this channel. And maybe you don't know who Ben Armstrong is, and most probably by the end of this video, you won't care about him either. But what I can tell you is that this non-apology is one of the worst train wrecks that I've seen. And yes, I have seen some shit. This is worse than that Derrick Jaxn apology. You'll find a link to that analysis in the description for your viewing pleasure. But no, really, this one is worse because it all began when this tweet popped up on my Twitter timeline. Sometimes in life you make mistakes you can't undo. Sad to tell you all that Bethany Literary and I are getting a divorce. She filed divorce papers to me today. To get it out of the way so there are no questions, yes, I am with Duchess of Defy. And my first reaction was, wait a minute, this has to be satire. I mean, who announces a divorce tagging both your soon-to-be ex-wife and your mistress at the same time? Because you know that thanks to human nature, the first thing that anyone is going to do is compare, right? Out of curiosity, of course. By the way, Cassie or Cassandra or whatever is your name, I hope that you are aware that this guy just called you a life mistake he cannot undo. A bit unflattering way to catapult you into the mainstream, don't you think? But then he continues, Bethany is incredible and she helped me build my business and supported me. She's a great mother and we will be good co-parents together and I hope we are able to stay close friends. I am not proud of what led us here by any stretch of the imagination. I let my family down. Oh, now I get it. This is a classic story of a woman who loved a guy while he was broke, so potential in him stayed together through the hard times, and the moment he realizes he has made wife-changing money, then he finds himself a business partner. By the way, consider going to Dubai with said business partner like a huge red flag.
I am here in the beautiful city of Dubai, but I brought the most elite, the most exclusive Duchess of DeFi and all of crypto. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, Cassie Wolf. How's it going, Cassie?
Oh my gosh, Ben, it's been amazing.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah, that subtle tongue show has a whole new meaning now. But wait, there's more. And I'm sorry to Bethany and my kids over my mistake. Bethany and I grew apart as people and we were heading in opposite directions for a while. Marriage is hard, very hard, because people change over time, and after 15 years, neither one of us is the same person we were when we met. Yeah, on one hand, I forgot to mention that they have children, which makes this process so much harder and so much more painful. Not to mention that the fact that he's making it grossly public is disgusting enough. But he hasn't finished yet. Going forward, I want my personal life to be less in the public. Bro, this is a step in the wrong direction. But you don't look like the type that knows what common sense is. But ripping the band-aid off here is what had to occur. Pay attention to that. He's comparing destroying his marriage and kids to a band-aid. Nothing of importance has been lost. It's just a temporary inconvenience. But here's my favorite part. You will see Cassie on the channel and around more and more. So you're telling me that your mistress is going to be featured more and more on your channel? Isn't that the opposite of having less of a public life? At this point, the best all of us can do is move forward together. No, I think your wife is moving forward, and good for her. But you, Paul, we are about to rip and tear your apology in ways that could give a coroner wet dreams. But not before showing part of his meltdown video when he was outside one of his former business partner's house. A business partner that he was not smashing, and began to threaten him while Cassandra or Cassie was waiting in the car, right behind him with an effing weapon in the trunk.
To Carlos's house. This is where Carlos lives, guys. I am live streaming from Carlos's house. Carlos has my Lamborghini right here in his garage.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
Here they are. Here's the police. Here's the police. Police are here, guys.
Okay, stop.
Hey, how's it going? Oh, hey.
Stop.
Oh, stop. I couldn't
You
hear.
have a weapon on you.
No, I do not.
Okay.
I do not.
So.
I have one in my vehicle. Oh, put the phone down. Okay.
Put the phone.
All right. Okay. Okay. Put the phone down.
Put the fanny pack down.
Okay. Weapons. No
Where
weapons.
in the car is your gun?
It's in the back seat.
Back seat?
Yep.
Is anybody else in the car?
Yes, there's someone in the car.
Who's in the car? Who?
What's that?
Who's in your car?
Who's in my car?
Yes.
Okay. Let's,
Who's in your car?
who's in my car?
Who's in your truck, sir?
Cassie is in my car. Cassie's in my
All
truck.
right, Cassie.
Cassie's in my truck. My wife knows that we're here, by the way. She knows we came to do this. But my wife is aware. So we're live on YouTube right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I told you this was going to be quite a ride. But let's jump right into the first clip of the apology so you can judge for yourself.
Hey guys, this is not the easiest video that I ever had to make by any stretch of the imagination. And I've got a couple words on a piece of paper. This is all from the heart.
Yeah, nothing projects spontaneity more than showing people his bullet points, half of which have nothing to do with the apology, as you're about to find out, and at the same time entirely blocking your wife's face. Yeah, this is Family Guy level stuff. We can tell that at least his wife made an attempt to look nice for the camera, while he looks like he had just finished unclogging not one but several toilets. And maybe his fans will say that this is the way he presents himself on most of his videos, but he could have put on a shirt. In terms of body language and for a person that is used to talking to the camera, his eyes are all over the place. He wants to look dramatic, but it only adds to the first impression of an artificial emotion. You see that he wants to inspire pity, only that his eyes are, for the most part, emotionless. And it gets worse in the following clip.
So we, first I'm sorry. Sorry to the Bit Squad. I know I let people down. I know that. I let my family down.
Now, this is the thing with this kind of apologies. Who is this apology for? He should be apologizing to his wife, not to us, and certainly not to the whole world. Why should we even care? That is a question that you should get used to ask. Why does this video exist? What are his intentions in the first place? And there's a reason why I mentioned Derrick Jaxn's video at the beginning, because there was some logic behind him apologizing to his audience. He had built this couples guru brand of being responsible as a man, as a partner, as a husband, and then he cheated on his wife. It is common sense that he had to say something to the people who followed him for that same topic. But Ben Armstrong is a crypto guru, and after painfully watching a couple dozen of his videos, I don't think his wife is that involved in his work. Okay, maybe she's supporting him in the background, but she could have remained private and his apology would have been equally as lame. So that's why you feel this apology is fake. That's why he looks like he's forcing his tears. Because in principle, the only person who needs this is standing right by his side. But besides body language, words are equally as important. So pay attention to what he says near the end of the following clip.
I've been at rock bottom before. I know what it feels like. I'm there again. The word relapse is an interesting word because I think the way I interpret it and the way other people may have interpreted it are not the same.
So the word relapse, that's one of the words that was written on his notepad. An important topic, I guess, a not so subtle way of saying that this is not the first time he has become a problem to his family. But even worse is the fact that he wants to play with the meaning. The way I interpreted this is not the same way that other people interpret it. I think anyone could have a hard time messing up the meaning of relapse. It basically means fucking up things again. And I mention this because that's something narcissists and manipulators do all the time. They try to distort the meaning of words and sentences to the point of telling you that it was you who misinterpreted them. But now I need to give you a trigger warning because in the next clip, he goes full victim to inspire as much pity as he can.
But I've been taking diet pills and I've been taking some steroids, some stuff that I thought was helping me. It helped me get my body in shape. You guys know I was very out of shape. I was doing everything I can to try to do the best.
Oh yes, it must have been that I was out of shape and I was not feeling good about myself, and poor me. I was just trying to do my best, and something that we still don't get is why his wife is looking at him with at least a bit of compassion. But the timeline of events can shed some light on that. Just to put things in perspective, the Dubai trip with his business partner was in June, then this video was by the end of August, then the crazy meltdown hanging out with his business partner was by the end of September, and the divorce tweet was 1 month later. So that's why by this point at the end of August, his wife still had some kind of hope for their marriage. But in my opinion, she should not have agreed to appear in this video. And maybe she didn't, but he could have manipulated her into this. And the words that he says in the following clip will give you a hint of that manipulation.
And obviously, a lot of people know at this point. And if you don't, you're going to know now. I had an affair. I did. And I know that I have a family brand. That's my brand. Family. And this is my family.
Yeah, the family brand thing. That reminds me of when a company says that you're part of their family. And it's as cringe as you can imagine. I'm sure that he told her, hey, you must appear in the video because we are a family brand and I need you here by my side. And that's another detail that I left out. This apology happened because he was kicked out of the crypto company he had with two other people. One of them, the owner of the house in the meltdown video. So you're beginning to connect the dots. On one hand, your intuition tells you that there's something off, that his body language is forced, and on the other, his intentions are murky. And he's using his wife to convince people that he's still a good man. But it gets much better, or let's say, it gets worse when he defends his mistress in the following clip.
And it went on for a while, and, you know, the other person is not a bad person. I want to say that. I take full responsibility for all of this.
It's important to mention that nobody knew who the third person was at this point, so if her or his identity hadn't been revealed, then why give them a mention? You begin to see that this guy enjoys humiliating his wife in public, not only in the original tweet, tagging both women in it, but now mentioning the other person when nobody could care less about that. This is why I repeat this over and over again. You must be aware of the words and the body language, but always focus on the intentions as well. Why do people act the way they do? Notice, for example, the question he asks his wife in the following clip.
And, you know, what sets family more than stay together when you go through something like this? And we're going to stay together.
Yeah, well, I love him so much.
He wants to make sure that she reinforces the fact that they are going to stay together. And it's the only time he addresses her in the whole video, and two things happen. First, his face when he asks the question is anything but kind. His face is more like a threat, like he's expecting her to just behave the way he wants her to. All of a sudden, the face he's been putting, fake tears and all, goes out the window in seconds. That is the kind of split-second facial expressions you should learn to catch on the fly. And I'm sure you also noticed that she had doubts. She stuttered and her voice volume was very low, not sure of what to answer to a straight question. Are we going to stay together? But here's the rest of what she said.
And all couples go through hard times, and I believe in redemption and I believe in hope, and I fully believe that Ben and we've invested too much in our relationship for either one of us to walk away.
Yeah, this is a sunk cost fallacy in its purest form. People demonstrate a greater tendency to continue an endeavor once an investment in money, effort, or time has been made. Or, in other words, I had been with this guy for so long, I might as well continue with him because why not? The problem with the sunk cost fallacy is that it can be a force for good, but at the same time can be a force for bad. It all depends on your biases, but if you have been manipulated or been guilt-tripped into staying in a relationship, one of the favorite statements of a toxic personality is more or less like this. We have been through so much. Do you want to throw the towel now? Now, the funny or sad part of this, depending on your perspective, is that this guy dedicated more than 1/3 of the apology to talk about his business. And I'm not going to torture you much with that, but notice how he switches to full-on word salad.
And like I said, this is me looking at it from my perspective. From their perspective, things were different. And they didn't want to talk to me about this. People haven't wanted to talk to me about it. They've known for a while. And they just... It felt like when I got confronted about it that I was ambushed.
Yeah, it sounds strange at first because why should he be talking about the company he was just kicked out from? But when you watch the following clip, you get it.
I built it in a way that I'm not in total control of it. I'm not. There are things I can do legally. There are things I can do to fight. But at the end of the day, if I want to save Bitboy Crypto, channel you guys love, or you love to hate, or the other. If I'm gonna save it,
We just discovered his true intentions. This video was not about his apology. This video was about him trying to fool his followers into thinking that despite being fired from the original crypto company, he was going to fight for his audience and yada yada yada. This stupid trick is that he starts with all the fake crying that I've made mistakes, we are a family brand, we're going to stay together, so he can connect that pity to whatever is happening with his business. That's why that question to his wife, are we going to stay together, is so important, because it was a subconscious trigger for the viewers. If she's willing to stay with him despite his cheating, then why can't you keep listening to his crypto psychobabble now that it's his darkest hour? How can you possibly think of abandoning him? And he hammers it again in one last clip.
and there's a lot here. There's a lot to save. And the fact is, nobody probably in history has made more millionaires than this channel made in the last bull run. We're gonna do it again.
Yeah, I think that must be the most pathetic way of talking about a successful business that has created millionaires. So that's how these toxic personalities work. You realize that none of that pseudo-apology was for his wife because those are private matters. The public has nothing to do with that. But he decided to go public for his own benefit and, at the same time, humiliate his wife and his mistress in the process. That's why I told you that this is perhaps the most pathetic narcissist in history, but they all end up the same way. Don't forget to download my free 100 body language tips in the description of this video, and make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss any of my body language analysis and tips. Much love and bliss.